Welcome back to the Learning Lab podcast. I'm your host, Brian Clason, and joining us today is Travis Motal, Chief of Schools from Liberty Hill ISD. We are going to talk about artificial intelligence and school safety. Welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, word on the street is you're a Bobcat. Yeah?
Yes, I am. My diploma actually says Southwest Texas State, though, so it's been a little bit. I graduated in May of 2002, so it's been a little bit, yeah. Came back for a master's, got a master's. That master's says Texas State.
Okay.
That was in 2008, yeah.
So tell us a bit about you, your role as Chief of Schools, a little bit about your history, a little bit about Liberty Hill ISD, and what's that community like? Just give us a rundown.
Yes. I actually had to count it up because I wanted to make sure I had it right. This is my 20th year in education, which is just really hard to imagine. I started teaching in Pflugerville ISD, classroom teacher, and then moved up to elementary assistant principal, and then went out to Taylor, where I became elementary principal, and then moved up to middle school principal, and then was fortunate to have the opportunity to go out to Liberty Hill ISD, was middle school principal there, then moved up to central office, director of secondary, which was over safety and security in the schools, and then now my new role, Chief of Schools. Been a really exciting journey and really exciting path, and have learned a lot along the way. The Chief of Schools role right now is, basically I tell everybody I'm in charge of kind of anything that happens in the schools, right? I got a whole team that supports me and supports the schools, and that's really exciting. The school safety aspect has just been, something that's kind of on everybody's mind, and, really passionate about that and making sure we're doing, all we can to keep the schools safe and keep the kids safe and the staff safe. So.
And it's evolving quickly, right? Like
Yes.
of any part of your role as Chief of Schools, it's probably safety that is constantly evolving.
Yeah, whether it comes down to some aspect of physical safety or something that has to do with, mental health and just, safety of students and what they're thinking or what they're searching on the internet. I mean, it's ever evolving now. It kind of goes everywhere for sure. So.
Yeah. In our first episode, I met with Waco ISD, and they have a really interesting story of why they started exploring artificial intelligence as an option to enhance their security posture district-wide. Yeah. They had a active shooter incident that ended up not being real. It was a false report. And then they found a number of weapons at one of the high schools. That was easy to find online. And in my research, in researching Liberty Hill ISD, you guys came up so much around your artificial intelligence adoption, but I didn't really hear a story in there as to why. Yeah. Can you give the listeners just a breakdown of why artificial intelligence?
For sure. In Liberty Hill ISD, we're right at 9,000 students, and we're growing very fast. We were close to 20% at one point, and we're down to about 10 or 15%, which is still fast, but not as fast. And so there was a lot of things happening, all at one time. And we were having discussions about building schools and physical safety of schools and, how are people getting in and out. And then Uvalde happened in May of, I guess that was a couple years ago now. And that summer, our school board and our superintendent challenged our team with what are all the things that we need to do in order to enhance school safety. And we had a long list of things. And artificial intelligence was not on that list, to begin with. And then as we started researching, we had a company reach out to us and say, hey, we're currently using artificial intelligence in the commercial area. We think we could possibly partner with the schools and use that for school safety. We're kind of starting. We're not sure where to go. And the name of the company is Spark Cognition. And they said, we'd like to, if you're willing to, we'd like to pilot with you guys and see what we can do to make this happen. And immediately we jumped on it. We have the normal list of school safety things, and this was kind of on that secondary list. And we said, we don't want there to be any kind of barrier in keeping our schools safe, right, for our students and staff. And so, we started down that path of just how could we use this. Go ahead.
How did they find you? Like, why Liberty Hill? Of all there's so many
places,
districts in Texas. How did they find you?
Yeah, it turns out their CEO actually lives in our school district. His kids attend one of our schools, and apparently him and his wife were talking, and they were kind of like, hey, I think we could do this. Who do we partner with? Hey, our kids go to school here, and let's see if you can utilize that. So that was really how that partnership started. They put us in touch, and then we started meeting with their team on what they can do, and here we are a couple years later, fully implemented. So.
What was the reaction of the community when this was brought up?
Yeah, it would. I mean, the community has been great. We have the most amazing community in Liberty Hill. We have a fully supportive parents, fully supportive community. Our school board is wonderful, and nobody hesitated. As soon as we started the conversation, we have a school safety committee that we talked with that's made up of students and staff, and that small committee was like, "Yes, go for it. Hey, whatever we can do to support it." So they started helping us get the word out. And then as we started coming online, we started sharing more with our parents community about what this is going to look like, and nobody said anything. I mean, everybody was very supportive and understanding and said, hey, if this helped keep our schools safe for students and staff, let's go down it. So it's been wonderful.
Yeah, in my research, Liberty Hill and Waco ISD, I would consider early adopters. Not that artificial intelligence is super new to everyone, but it's definitely new, I think, to K through 12 public ed, and especially in Texas. And I think the one amazing thing that I hear between both districts, and I expected when I asked this question to hear some like crazy pushback, like there had to be some group, some parent, a student somewhere on the school board pushing back, and there wasn't that. People were willing to hear about it, talk about it, and everyone was included and had a voice. Did you hear from students?
Yeah.
Did you hear from staff?
I think when we framed it in the sense of, we're doing all of these things to keep our students and staff safe, and this is one more area that can not only enhance our safety from a response piece, but also potentially a predictive piece before it even gets into the school.
Right.
I think immediately everybody went, well, hold on. So not only you're talking about reactive, you're talking about being proactive now. I mean, it really didn't stop the conversation. I think because we framed it that way, I think that helped quite a bit. I mean, we had a couple of people ask questions like, well, does it do this? And is it going to invade my privacy? And are you keeping images? And we had to answer some of those questions, but none of those questions were framed in the sense of you shouldn't do it. It was more of just help me understand a little bit more, which is great.
Yeah.
We had no problem with that.
And that's not unique to your community, right? I think that's something that we would all be concerned about regardless of where we lived, right?
Sure. Yeah, anywhere. And we also told them that, the system that we are using is really no different than the camera system we have now, right? So the images and the feeds that we have now in our current camera system that we've always had hasn't changed, right? So again, once we got some of that information out that, answered all the questions, but again, all the questions weren't framed in the sense of don't do it. It was just, hey, help me understand a little bit more.
Yeah, great. Talk about the features of the AI. I think that's what we're all here for, right? Like, so what's the cool stuff that the technology does?
It is so cool. I mean, I think back to the James Bond movie GoldenEye, a long time ago, and some of the things that they were doing, and thinking, man, is that stuff ever going to become real? And here we are in this day and age, and we're actually facilitating it happen, and it's just absolutely amazing. We started off with when we went out to the Spark Cognition facility. They were doing some demos with us, and they were mainly around weapons at that point. It was if someone is carrying anything that looks like a weapon, how could we potentially notify you that this weapon is either about to come in your building or in your building? And then from there, we were to expand it to these different use cases. And so the way I would frame it would be, it can do basically anything that you want it to do as long as you can teach it how to do it, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So, a simple thing would be I'm walking down the hallway and I have something in my hand. The computer, takes that camera image, looks at it and says, hey, that looks like that might be a weapon. Well, people carry stuff in their hands all the time, right? So you have to slowly start refining that and teaching the computer like, well, this looks like a weapon, but this doesn't look like a weapon. And so it's just absolutely amazing how it can do it. So we ended up, utilizing 4 use cases. We have one that's a weapons detection, and that's any type of weapon, someone might be carrying.
Does that work outside? Sorry, I know we're talking like inside.
Yeah.
It sounds like
any
a weapon coming in. Okay, so how far? Well, this may not be info that you want to give out, but so someone approaching from off campus, off property, coming in, you already have that ability.
Yeah,
to...
any camera that we have, right? So we have parking lot cameras, exterior cameras, we have cameras inside the building. So, if the camera can see it and the camera can interpret the image, well then, it's able to give us a read on whether or not it's something we need to be concerned about. And so, so we did the weapons, which again is kind of how the whole conversation started around Uvalde, right?
Sure.
And as we were evolving, the company came back to us and said, well, we think we have what we call other use cases besides weapons. Weapons is obviously how the, like I said, where it started. But, if someone fell down, would you be interested in knowing that? And we're like, well, yeah, what would that look like?
Oh, yeah.
If someone propped the door open and the door was left open, would you be interested in that? If someone went to an area of the school where they weren't supposed to go in. And so these are all, like I said, these use cases that we started kind of fleshing out. And so, yeah, they were able to slowly, teach the computer, really how to interpret all that. And it's been absolutely amazing. How deep you want me to go at this moment, right? But there's so many things that we could go on. I mean, it's just absolutely
so
amazing.
That learning
technology.
piece for the AI, did they have to come out and practice on your actual facilities for that learning to take place? Or is this like done in a lab somewhere and uploaded to your system?
So we did, when we started the conversation in the summer, that fall, we started off with just giving them copies of our video images and letting them run through the software for a few months, going, okay, because again, it was new to them just like it was new to us, right? They knew they could do it in one field, but not necessarily this field. And so we just said, hey, here's our camera images, take the video feeds and run through it. And then from there, once we were able to kind of work out what could and could not happen with those camera images, then we actually became live in the spring semester. I guess that would be the spring of 23, just this past year. And so there's a server device that connects to your camera system. And so we went live with that camera or that device for probably about 2 months, maybe almost 3. Where again, it was a lot of having to teach the computer what images they should take or not. So, when we first went live, there was, I would say, hundreds of thousands of images it was capturing and saying, this might be a problem, this might be a problem. And that just took refinement on their end to go, this is something we want to look at, what's not what we don't want to look at.
Did you have to look at those photos too to say, hey, this is a concern for us, this is not, this
yes,
is,
yeah,
isn't?
they were able to tell, some things without really needing our help a whole lot, right? So they really brought the cases back to us that they just weren't quite sure how to interpret or what to do with. We had, basically we started off kind of every other week, and then we went down to weekly meetings up to that point of just kind of, okay, hey, these are all the images that captured last week. These are the ones we have questions on. What do you think about this? Can you adjust the camera this angle instead of that angle? We noticed at this part of the day, this camera facing the door, the sun is glaring off the floor so much that it can't really tell anything, right? So could we either put some type of screening on the door? Can we adjust the camera angle? So there was a lot of that kind of going back and forth. And then we really became fully operational in April of last year, April 2023.
So still super young.
And then, we've continued into the school year. So.
What's the actionable item for you or the principal security once an alert is there? Like, how is that communicated? How quickly to who? What is that process and training and rollout like?
Yeah, and it's been great to evolve with Spark Cognition along the way, because it started off with really just a website, and you would have to log in and kind of look at it, which was kind of an extra step, right? If I'm not around something, or if there was an alert or a concern, I have to walk back to my computer all the time to go do it, which then evolved to an app. And they started off an app on a trial basis. It was a very slow app, and they were kind of learning. But now we have this amazing technology, which is just like any kind of notification that you get anywhere else. So we have the 4 use cases. We have the weapons. We have intruder, which is going somewhere you're not supposed to go, door being left open, and person down if somebody falls down. So all 4 of those are notified directly to the campus administration. They get an alert on their phone saying, hey, we think we have this problem. Alert pops up, you click on it, you open up the app, and it shows you an image right away of what the computer is thinking the problem is, right? So if it's a person down, it shows you somebody laying down. If it shows a weapon, whatever it might be. And then on that image is also the camera number. So that way, again, I can look at the image, see where it's at in the building, and an administrator at that point can determine it has a kind of acknowledge or a no on the app. So yep, acknowledge, I see that is a problem, I need to go check it out, or no, it's not. And that's doing 2 things. One is it's telling you took care of it, you didn't do about it, but you're also helping the computer and teach the computer, hey, that's not something that is a concern, right? So that's all information that's feeding back to it.
So there's this continuous improvement loop going on, and then also this accountability for the staff member to say this was resolved, right? That's great. If I had this in my campus, I'm one of your principals, can I assign other folks an account so that they're looking at it?
Sure. We can, I don't know if there's a maximum amount of number, but we haven't reached that, right? So we've got a number of people on it. We have all of our campus administrators, along with our campus police officers that are on the campus.
Okay.
And then there's a few of us at central office that have it, and we only have the weapons detection one. I don't necessarily need to know every day that a door is propped open or that someone's not where they're supposed to be, but the high school administration needs to know that, right? So they can go take care of that. So I just have the weapons detection on mine. But I know in talking with the campus administrators, they use it all the time. I think it's great.
Cool. Do you have ISD police, or do you partner with your local police?
We have our own ISD police department. Yep.
And so they've been ingrained, I take it, into this process. Are they loving it?
That's the great thing about having your own ISD police department is they are side by side along with you, right? It's not an outside agency that you've got to work through memorandums of understanding, or they have separate bosses or anything like that. We all have one boss, superintendent, right?
That's great. Yeah.
And so we're all able to sit in the room and talk through it. Not to take away from all other agencies, because they're great and they support our schools, but having your own as employees that are right there in the same building in the same room with you does just kind of simplify that whole process. So this
really seems to be to create more proactiveness in behavioral threat assessment too, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like when we first started, back after Uvalde that summer, one of our things on our checklist was additional and upgraded security cameras, and those are very expensive, right? When it comes to the hardware and the software and all the different things and updating them. And the dilemma we had with starting that process was security cameras are a lot of reactionary, right? Unless I have somebody physically watching the camera the whole time, it doesn't stop anyone or anything from happening. And then you add in the aspect of, if I did have someone watching it all the time, it's a human being. That human being gets tired. They have to take off work. They need to use the restroom. They have to go eat. They have to. There's always a human distraction, a piece that takes me away from looking at it. And then on top of that, you have 250 cameras. I mean, they're not possibly watching all 250 at the same time, right? So that was kind of our original hesitation at first with doing a lot with cameras. But then once we started having this conversation, well, now I have a computer that never needs to take off work, that never gets sick, that never looks away, that can look at all 250 at the same time. And not only look at it, but then interpret that data and then tell me, hey, worry about this, don't worry about that. Hey, I think this might be a problem, this is not a problem. I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, that's a great feature. I mean,
how many campuses do you have?
We have 9 total campuses right now, about to have 11. We're currently only operational at the high school.
At the high, okay. Is there plans to expand out?
Yeah, we've been talking about expanding out. The server device only holds so many cameras, right? So there's kind of where are you going to put more devices, and what does that look like to your network? When we first implemented the first device, we had to work through a little bit of, firewall and cybersecurity, and just because you have a third party now that's wanting to, access, your information. So you gotta kind of work through some of those things. So that's kind of, and then scaling up, unfortunately, comes with the cost of things, right? It's a wonderful feature. I mean, it's excellent, and there's nothing that wants to stop you from school safety, but you've got to put that in the comprehensive entire plan that you have within the budget that you have. And so we would love to scale up, and that's our plan. We haven't gotten there yet. So.
Yeah. Can we talk budget? I'm sure that was part of the heavy conversation about onboarding this. So, how did you appropriate funds, and what's your game plan moving forward?
So the first year, our partnership with Spark Cognition was at no cost to us. And if you got to think about it, really weren't operational until April. So part of that was there was a learning piece for both us and them. And so they were willing to partner with us, and they underwrote the cost. And so, we didn't have anything to have to pay for that first month. Again, like I said, we weren't really operational until April on that piece. Because of the cost, we went out for what we call a request for proposal this past fall. That offered really any company that is willing to do this and can supply the same product. Hey, come out, put a proposal in, we'll interview. Ultimately, Spark Cognition was the only one that completed the proposal and turned it in. So we've been able to continue our partnership with them. Had we not, we would have interviewed several companies, potentially could have done that. But, with the list of the scope that we had, this was the only company that was able to actually do that, which is great. I don't know the total in cost. What I would say is, it's roughly $400 to $500 per camera that you operate on. You've also got, you've got to buy the server device that you host. And I don't remember off the top of my head where that where that number was, right? But that's a server device that you have to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's some startup costs that are anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 that are one-time use fees and things that you've got to, pay for training to come out, and you've got to pay that staff. And so, all in, I would say, we're probably looking at $200,000 to $300,000, for this next year.
In total.
In total.
So like startup, ongoing costs.
Yeah, but I would say about 100 of that is just really this one time to get us up and going.
Oh, okay.
Versus annually, it's probably going to be about 100,000 or so, right? So,
and then as you maybe onboard more campuses,
then if you
that
add
number
more,
will start going up a bit.
If you add more cameras, you add more campuses. There are some discounts where if you do a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year license, right, that you can kind of scale some of that cost. Right now we're going year to year because it's a new product, right? We want to make sure it fits our needs, and we didn't want to overcommit, and same with them, they didn't want to overcommit either, right? So we're starting off with the 1 year, but it's one of those things where, you hate to talk about money when it comes to it because is there a dollar number that's too much for school safety for students and staff? But the reality is your budget is this right here, and you've got to fit all the things from fencing to locks to security film to cameras that need to be updated and added to, AI technology, right? So that's where we're at, starting with the high school and hopefully hoping to scale up. So.
Okay. Have you guys explored any grants, state level, federal?
Yeah. So we've actually in our second iteration of the state grant, I'm going to get the name wrong. It's the TEA school safety grant that we applied for. We got a dollar amount the first year. We're getting a larger dollar amount the second year.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of school funding that's still kind of out there, right, with the legislature and what's going to happen with that. So we're very hopeful that will come to fruition and help fund some of these things.
Yeah.
The grants so far have been, when you use them, you've got to kind of say what you're going to use them for. And we've been trying to focus the grants more on like the fencing and the security film and things like that we're trying to do. But now that we've got that done, I think the second iteration of grant coming in, we may try to repurpose that for a little bit more technology. So it's a little bit higher of a dollar amount, so we'll hopefully be able to use that.
So it sounds like that hardened perimeter security and then that soft perimeter with the AI, right? They go together so well.
And I always talk about layers, right? I mean, the more layers you can add in, the better. Our first and most proactive layer is our students and staff and community, right? Yeah. Because they know and they hear things faster than any camera or anything that can ever pick up, right? And so we have a see something, say something, anonymous report line, and we try to get our counselors and APs and teachers out talking to kids. And another benefit of having our own police department is they talk with kids all the time, and so there's so much information that we get just from that. And so the more they can keep us in the loop, the better. And then our second line, in my opinion, would be the hardening of the school, right? But not hardened so much to where nobody feels welcome, right? So where's that fine line and that balance? And then this last piece of this responsiveness with the technology. So we have all three of those layers operating. I feel great about our safety and security. You never feel 100%, but you feel good about what you're doing and try to keep kids and students safe.
Yeah, I like that you talk about layers. This isn't the magic bullet, the silver bullet. It's not going to solve everything. It's a slice of the pie in school safety, right? We preach so much at the Safety Center. You need to train your students, train your parents, your teachers, because they know and hear everything immediately. And they're all the dots of information that you need, especially when we talk school behavioral threat assessment. Like they need to know what to report, how to report it, why is it important to report it, right? Like saving lives. Yeah, for sure.
I heard a story one time of another incident that happened in another state somewhere, and they came in and they were police and they had the FBI and they were investigating all these things and all these questioning all this stuff. Yeah. And they called the assistant principal, and the assistant principal was like, it was this person, go get that person. They're like, how do you know all that? I live here every day. I know all these kids, right? And so it really reiterated, like they said the whole law enforcement team kind of looked like, how is this one person so knowledgeable? And it just, and I think back to that story a lot just because it's those relationships that really matter. And so the more we can keep fostering that, I think it's just going to be better, not only for the school safety piece, but just for your culture, your school in general, right now.
And then that just is, I think people are afraid of artificial intelligence, like it's going to replace what we do. No, there's nothing that replaces human interaction, relationship, and taking care of each other, right?
Yeah. This is just one more step in our school safety process, right? It's not the end all be all, right? There's all these things have to be functioning together to make it happen for sure.
Yeah. I love that, man. Yeah. What have been so far, because it's still very early, right? What are your biggest wins and successes with this?
It was I don't know what it would say it was funny or not. It's funny in the end. But the first day of going operational, we get an alert for a weapon on campus, and then all of us are jumping on our phones like, oh my god, alert! We're looking
This
at
is
it.
This is it.
Oh, here we go, right?
Yeah.
It was a teacher with a hot glue gun, and she was hanging something on the wall, and she's going to hang it, and the camera picked it up, and so we all had a sigh of relief and a laugh, but then again we were like, it works, right?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the picture of the teacher using a hot glue gun, it looked exactly like she was holding a handgun right in the room, and so so we've had 2 of those alerts that have happened. One within that first day, and we've had another one this fall. I'd say the biggest win that we've had from utilizing the AI so far has been 2 things. One is there was a young lady that had fainted and fell down on the ground.
Okay.
And as soon as she laid on the ground, the camera picked up her image of laying on the ground and said, hey, I think this is somebody laying on the ground. And so we looked at it. Fortunately, where she fainted, it was right across from that athletic trainer's office. So before we could even respond or do anything with it, they were already working with her, right? Okay. But again, it reiterated to us that it works, right? It tells us what's going on. And then the second one was we had a group of students go into a stairwell that students are not supposed to be going into. And so they go into that, and, they were being students. It looked like something was kind of being planned or going down as far as trying to skip or fight, or something like that, right? But again, it alerted us to it. We look at it. Oh, these kids are in there. They had an administrator go to the top and bottom of the stairs, get the group of kids, so that way they, and then, we're able to sort out before anything happened, right? So those have been our 2, big wins that we've had. We had another spot where a door was propped open after hours, and so we got that alert. Turned out the door wasn't really propped open. There was a teacher standing right outside the door, but you couldn't tell that from the camera, right? Okay. It's a good lesson for us with our staff, about not propping doors open. But those so far have been our things that are telling us it's working. It's giving us good information. I would rather it tell me something that I don't have to respond to than not, right? So far that have been big wins. And again, the community's been really supportive about the whole thing. We just I can't thank our community enough about how great they've been and how supportive they've been with all this.
It seems like it's providing you, again, it's that lens that you choose to look at this, and it sounds like these are teachable moments, right? Sure. Even if there really wasn't a gun, it was a hot glue gun, the student fainted, you already had someone reaching out. It's just that reminder, that conversation starter with folks, that it's even after action review worthy, right? Like, hey, this is how we responded. This was really great, even though it wasn't that big time emergency that we think about.
Sure.
And I think we start exploring more layers of security because we worry about the worst case scenario, right? The active shooter, the active threat. But there's so many things that happen day to day that are worthy of a response to keep someone safe or healthy that isn't the active shooter, right? But it's still worth taking care of someone in the community, right?
And you hit the nail on the head when we were talking about the use cases and what all they could do. And, we, again, went into it really with the weapons mindset. And that's really where we stayed focused for they had brought some use cases up. And I remember at the beginning, like, we just need one thing. That's why we're here. We don't need all these things. And the more you thought about it and the deeper discussion you had, you were going, you know what, as traumatic and scary as those are, and as much as you want to prevent them, you have all of these other things that happen day to day that, if I can get out in front of that and we can help students and staff, why would we not take advantage of that, right? And the technology is there for us to do it. So again, somebody falling down, someone going they're not supposed to, someone propping a door open, I mean, those are things that happen, all the time to some level, right? And so if I can know about them or the staff can know about them, then we can better respond. And so that's a great point about you always plan and the worst gets all the attention, but there's just so many things day to day that you really want to respond to.
And then you just get more data points, right? And then you realize, there's hot spots on the campus that we need to plan differently for. Right? Earlier you had mentioned like a cybersecurity aspect of it, your firewall. It was a question that I had for Waco is, there's always someone just a little smarter than you and your IT guy and the people that provide this software and technology. Someone, whether it's someone in another country trying to hack in, do the whole ransomware thing, shut down your system, or it's a kid who's just really good in that realm. How have you worked to ensure that the system can't be used against you or hacked or gamed?
Yeah, we have, and that was when we first started the conversation. We had members of our technology team there with us to not only help us with the camera feed of things, but also trying to help us with that back wall, firewall of like, okay, just let's keep this in mind as we, is this something we're even open to, or are we worried that we're going to expose too much, right?
Yeah.
And so we haven't had any issues so far that have come up at all, right?
Okay.
And I don't know if that's because of, we do have such a stringent firewall or we do have such a stringent team. We've also added several different people to our technology team, one of them being a cybersecurity expert who's constantly evaluating all these different little hits and happening that are all throughout the day. I think that's made us more diligent and more proactive on things. I would say no system is perfect. I'm sure, at some point someone will try to game something, right? But I think all what we can do is be as diligent as we can and be as proactive as we can to try to prevent that. And then, to your point earlier, using those data points, those small data points along the way to make adjustments before it becomes a big data point or something you have to respond to.
Right.
So again, I think having that person on our staff, evaluating those hits that are always happening within our firewall to try to prevent something more major happen. So yeah, not only we haven't had anything that's come up yet. But we're going to stay diligent and try to stay ahead of that as much as we can for sure.
That's great. I like that. I had this question for you about hindsight and reflection, and you keep putting in perspective how young this program is. So it's kind of weird asking about hindsight, but you're almost a year in on this live. Is there any reflection now on, hey, maybe we should have done this differently, or when we go to onboard at another campus at some point, we're going to do it in a different way, whether it's more effective, cost-effective, time-efficient?
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier we ran into is just the implementation timeline expectation, right? When we started the conversation in the summer, in my mind and in talking with them, like we'd be up in a couple months, like 30, 60 days. But then reality sets in on, what we didn't think about getting into the firewall. Okay, we got to have several conversations about that. Oh, we need a more stringent firewall. Oh, then we had we had this. Oh, we need to order the device. Oh, the device is 60 to 90 days out. Oh, okay, we the device. We had the device. Hook up the device. Oh, it needed this cable. Oh, we didn't have that cable. Oh, when we set up the device, our technology people did all they could. But we needed somebody from the company really to be there because then there were some questions about that, right? So then that took 2 weeks to set up, right? And so suddenly you're kind of like always backing out. So hindsight now, I feel like questions I would ask anytime going forward now would be, what does full implementation look like from their end? What is all the equipment that we need? How can we source it? Are you buying it? Are we buying it? Is it part of the contract? Not part of the, those kind of things that have all just kind of come up along the way, which I don't know that any of us really knew to ask right at the beginning.
You
right?
just don't know. You don't know, right?
I didn't know, right? So now I kind of know that. And I think the other part would be having kind of I feel like I have a more realistic timeline about implementing, right? I would have never thought we would have been in April of 23, right? I thought, like I said, I would thought November, no problem, right? And so you just, you got a lot of hands in the pot, right? I mean, you got our technology person and our firewall person, our network person and our camera person, and you got all of their people. And so suddenly you have 15 people in the room all trying to get into this one device to figure out how to make it operational. On top of that, we were going through a camera system upgrade. So all of our cameras were getting changed out. And so we got it configured, which we thought was going to be right. But then we put the new camera in, it didn't work like we thought. So then we had to get the camera person to come back out, right? And just all those kind of things. So I think my biggest hindsight is, just being more clear on kind of what's needed and what a realistic timeline is going to be like, what a true cost comparison is now going forward. Again, we didn't really know cost at the beginning because it was new for everybody. We just didn't know what it was going to cost. And then, I think from the beginning, I would have had more people in the room than less, right? We started off with kind of a smaller group, but I think if I would have had all 15 to 16 of those people in the room at the beginning, we could have thought through some of the things that we were going to be having, right? Some of the problems that we ran into. But again, all those people really came together to make it happen, and I'm just so appreciative of our team and their team. But yeah, that's probably the biggest hindsight I've had, because otherwise it's been operational. It's been great. I mean, it's I really can't complain about the product. I mean, we've been notified more than we would need to on some things, but again, I'd much rather have that, right? And so so that's been great.
You didn't realize you're going to get into project management, right? At the level that you were doing it.
Yes.
We do that too when we look at our our feedback every year and our needs assessment at the center. We look at where we're going to expand to next, and whether it's a training or a handout. And I love making little checklists of like, well, these are all the things that we ran into that were pain points. And so I have these series of checklists, and it sounds like that's kind of where you're at. And you're learning for that next round of, when here's all the cost stuff, here's all the cords and wires and mainframes.
Yeah, it's, and you think it's like, oh, there's the camera, and I'm gonna hook this up, and I'm gonna plug the computer, the
Just
wire
plug
in,
it in.
and it works, right? And what you don't see is all the things that are on the floor and behind that all make it happen.
In the
And
ceiling and the walls.
yeah, it just you don't realize how many things there are, right? And and so it was a little tricky, right? But in the end, I think it was a necessary evil for us to be able to say we had to go through that in order to get the product that we had.
Sure.
We learned a lot along the way, and now we're at full implementation, feeling great about it, and we feel ready for the next step when we get there. Right? So,
And I like this idea of being the model, and so not that maybe it was your idea to be the model or not, but regardless, I would as an early adopter, I would say you then get to be the model to say this is a way you could do it. So no one told you how to do it, which I think as a school or district leader is a nice freedom to have, instead of someone saying you need to do it this way, but you're not really in on that type of implementation. So there's that freedom, even though it was a lot of work that probably bogged you down.
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah, there's been I have to go back and check. 10 to 15 districts or whatever that have called us, right? And because we were, when we first started implementing, we were on some of the news headlines, and then so people that called us from that, and then Spark Cognition had hosted a school safety summit, and so I was a member of that panel, and I spoke, and so people reached out to us there. And so it's and I've been kind of advising them the same thing, like it's well worth the cost, time, energy that you're going to put in for the product, but you need to go up front. It's going to take probably 2 months longer than you think it will, just because there are some things that you've got to go through with getting all the right people in the room. And so I feel like I've been trying to give good advice to people that they've been going forward, again, whether it's with this company or a different company or whoever it is, right? That you just got to think through all those little things. And again, the more people you can have in the room kind of talking about pros and cons, the better.
That's all fantastic, and you've kind of answered my last question a little bit, so I'm trying to figure out how to reframe it here. Of all the things you talked about, I feel like you could help any other district, at least of your size, to say, hey, these are the things to consider. What's that top one or two things that you say to those districts when you call, or a new district that would call after seeing this? Say, hey, these are the 1, 2, 3 things you need to consider.
Everybody I've talked to is, I say, go for it. Don't let your hesitation on, I'm worried about whatever it is, to stop you. I said, get your people in the room and get their people in the room and talk to it. I mean, there's no reason not to do it. I said, when it first came out, again, I was kind of hesitant on, gosh, what is this going to mean? And I'm so thankful I didn't let that stop us, right? Because I love where we're at now. I've loved the journey along the way to get there. And so that's the first thing I tell them all. They're like, well, what about the cost? What about, and I said, I don't know. Don't let any of that stop you right now. Get the people in the room and talk through it. And then the second part is I tell them all the time, you can always call me. I'm happy to help. I can answer any questions from my perspective. But I said the next thing would be kind of get a list. Get a list from your technology. Because, safety people are usually safety-oriented, but they not be safety-oriented, but not technology-oriented. So I say, get your technology people in the room. What are their questions? What are they worried about? What do we need to talk through? Get that company room. What do they need from the patient? And try to bridge those two together. I said that would have saved me probably 4 to 5 months of time. I guess just didn't know that at the beginning, right? I wish we would have learned. But again, we know that now. But that's probably the two things I tell them. Go for it. Don't let it stop you. And then here, get the right people in the room and just start talking through it. And I said, if it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right? But in the end, it's been great for us, and we're looking forward to continuing.
Yeah, I think how many districts or just anybody, they never act, they never upgrade, they never improve because either it's waiting for that perfect time, which never happens, especially in education. There's never a perfect time. And then just that fear of change too, right? Like fail forward, figure it out along the way.
Yeah, and I think in the realm of school safety, right, there's nothing that you want to say was a barrier or prevented you from doing something when it comes to school safety, right? That's what everybody I talk to is like, you have the ability right now to be able to say, it really doesn't matter what it is. I need to try it because it's going to help my school safer, help make my school safer for students and staff. I think there's some of that hesitation when it comes to other things, right? Like, should I try this new budgeting software? Should I try this instructional resource? Is this worth the money? And is it really going to make a difference if my kids can read better? Like, you kind of think through all that. But school safety here, right? There's,
talking lives.
Everybody, I think if you look at all the board goals and beliefs and mission statements, school safety is in every one of those, right? So, it's all right there. So I said, you have the ability to be able to push that envelope a little bit with your teams and say, so we're willing to say no to school safety, guys? Well, no, we're not, right? Nobody's going to say that, right? So get all in the room and talk through it. And after you flesh it out, if it works and you can move forward, great.
Yeah.
If not, you've at least put it on the table, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
you've set the stage for 6 months from now to come back
Yeah.
to it, right? But
Yeah.
you've started that conversation, makes it easier to get back on the path, right?
And I think there's, with just all of the active threats, the active shootings that we've had, just nationwide, in school or not, I think there's a real fear of inaction, right? And so this is something that you can onboard, and it's doable. Why not, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to say no to it and then something happen and regret, maybe letting it sit on my conscience, like, if we would have done this, maybe we could have. Again, not saying it's the magic bullet or, the fix, the end all to be all, but I think that fail forward and that creativity and being inquisitive about new technology is necessary for our safety folks, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that original list that we started with after Uvalde, right? I was going back through and checking off like, we could do this, we can do that. We want to do this. It costs more money. This is not feasible right now. This I need to put in a bond program. This I need to write a grant for. And so, all of those things I felt like, I could justify to our board and our superintendent, say, here's the 20 things we came up with, and here's where we're at on all of them, right? And what I don't want to say is, well, I just didn't do any of them because I didn't think we could, right? It's like, no, we tried, and here's where we're at. Here's what we need to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
So, you have the ability, I feel like, when it comes to school safety, to just try it, and go forward with it. Yeah.
And you don't want to keep saying no out of fear or, other reasons. And then just technology passes you up, right? You don't want to be 10 years down the road and you guys are so far out, and then you realize there is something you need to onboard, but now it's so expensive because you're several iterations behind everyone else.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, I remember watching James Bond movie and thinking, hey, none of this stuff is possible. And like, here we are, like really using some of it, right, to some level. And it just is absolutely amazing. So I 100% technology evolves so fast, right? And, why not take it? Again, even if you don't fully adopt right now and move forward with it, you've at least had the conversation, or you have a knowledge base on what's capable. And so do you want to start at a smaller scale? And maybe you should start at a smaller scale. I mean, you starting with 10 cameras in high traffic areas is better than starting with no cameras, because that's what you can do right now, right? So, or whatever it might be, right? Like I want to hire a whole police force. Well, that would be great. If you start with one officer, right? And you kind of build from there, right? I'm saying anything like that, So, I would definitely recommend for people doing that. I hope schools reach out to us. I mean, Liberty Hill would love to partner with them. I would love to partner with them. I'm happy to talk through it. They can come out, check things out, talk to our team. We can set up a conversation with the Spark team. We're happy to facilitate any of that, because again, not only will that help us, but that's going to help them too, right? It just makes more kids safe around the state.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end here, and you kind of closed it for me. That's what I was going for. I was going to ask you, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah.
But you really nailed that really well.
Yeah.
Travis, thank you for being here. I love that we found each other online, and
it's great.
It was a little hard getting a hold of you. Had to get a little creative, but we made it work, right? We're all so busy.
Yes, we're here, yeah.
So I'm glad you were here, and thank you for coming to the Learning Lab.
Yeah,
thank you.
Love cats. Here we go.
There you go. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Bye.